everyone, it's me, Buster Green. Sorry I haven't posted a video in a week. I've been very, very sick. Somehow I got sick in November, and I'm still sick in the same way at the end of January. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Anyway, despite that, things have been kind of slow, but kind of hectic. Aside from being sick, I've been super busy, super working on a very complicated part of my anime. I'm guessing my anime is somewhere around 30% complete right now, but I'm at a part of it that's turned into a massive car crash. And then the other thing going on is I've just been playing Lost Judgment way too much for the past month. I finally beat the main story only to find out afterwards it has a complete post-apocalyptic motorbike side storyline. The hell? Anyway, so aside from that, people have been asking me to review SD Kamen Rider. I guess I will when I get around to it. But in the meantime, a movie I have been anticipating all year, Lupin vs. Catseye, finally dropped this Friday, so I'm going to immediately review that. Let's go over it, let's discuss it. Spoilers ahead. Oh, and hey, because this is Lupin the Third versus Catseye, Lupin's been red hot this year. We got Lupin 0, we got Lupin Part 6, and now this movie. But at the same time, this is our first new Catseye media in over 30 years. So even though I'm coming into this from a Lupin fan perspective, I really want to see what Catseye do in this movie. So the opening of this movie rules. Not only did they get back the classic English Lupin dub cast, and the movie starts off with a huge action scene of Lupin and Catseye both committing these major heists in Tokyo on the same night at the opposite sides of town. Lupin's on the east side of town, Catseye's on the west side of town. And the opening is so exciting. I dug that Lupin has this crazy Miami Vice style speedboat chase battle through the river. It's super, super insane. Lupin's got this crazy ass boat he made. And then Goemon comes out and he whips out his katana and it looks like he almost chopped a guy's head off. I'm chalking this up to slightly messy 3D animation, but what do you guys think? Did Goemon chop a guy's head off? Anyway, the suspense of the moment, purely fascinating. Meanwhile, Catseye is doing great with their heist too. So yeah, as I was expecting, this is our first time seeing Catseye in a modern setting. They got these updated costumes that make them look more like ninjas, less like jazzercise instructors. They got cell phones now, they've got all the modern stuff, and they're knocking over this museum by pretending to be cops, protecting the same museum, and the way they pulled this off is they gaslit Toshio again. Toshio always gets gaslit because his girlfriend is the leader of Catseye, and she just blatantly steals his stuff and uses it against him at work. Anyway, so our first bit of crossover synergy comes when Toshio almost catches Catseye with the classic Zenigata handcuff lasso trick. But then he cops a feel and immediately gets punched in the face, knocked unconscious. By the way, I'm overall digging the animation and the art style in this film, but there's a couple of moments where the frame rate drops out and the people look a little bit clunky. You can especially notice it in the action scenes where the people have been moving really smoothly and then suddenly they're not. Anyway, so then they go back to the cafe and we get some typical Catseye nonsense where Toshio continues to be the dumbest man who ever dumbed, and the girls continue to gaslight him so they know exactly where the cops are going to be and they can play him for everything he's worth. Then we get a random pivotal person who arrives and tells the girls that, guess what? They have to fight Lupin the Third. Oh my god, it's a crossover. And the reason they have to do this is because Lupin is off to get that Nazi treasure that their dad, who was German, probably knew about because of all the Nazi connections he had, because everyone in Germany knew a Nazi. Oh, and I see what they've done here. They've updated the story so that their dad isn't directly a Nazi anymore, but he's still loosely connected to them because, quite frankly, you can't have a good Germany movie without blaming the Nazis. Now after that, we get a status quo break where Toshio suddenly gets smart and figures out who Catseye is. But obviously Toshio is not smart enough to ever do that, so it's Lupin because Lupin is smart. And holy fucking shit, Lupin the Third is so fucking cool in this movie. They're playing him as chaotically as evil as possible, and at the start of this movie, he's basically the villain. And it's amazing because you can see, from this confrontation, that he is much badder and much more skilled than Catseye. Then Zenigata shows up, so Zenigata and Toshio immediately team up, and they start to, figure out what the hell's going on. At the same time they're figuring out what's going on, Catseye immediately flies to Europe to throw down with Lupin again against the next part of his caper. Now, speaking of chaotic evil Lupin in this movie, we also have chaotic edgelord evil Fujiko, which is a real surprise and a real treat in this movie. Now, she's doing that old shtick she does where she plays the real villain for personal gain. She does that from time to time, but in this movie, they depict her as being so extremely shitty that it's like on another level. In fact, it's on such another level that Goemon and Jigen immediately ditch Lupin once they see Fujiko is involved at all. And this is another classic Lupin comedy bit, but I love that in this movie, it's changed slowly over the years so that when we get to this movie, it's just immediately, oh, Fujiko's here, fuck this, we're out. Then the movie really builds suspense really well that it's implying that Lupin is about to attract the train, but then actually Catseye attacks it first. And also, Fujiko is on the train being an edgelord villain, so there's huge suspense where you don't know what the fuck Fujiko is going to do to them. And it's so interesting because this is probably the most evil version of Fujiko I think I've ever seen. So while Fujiko is being pure fucking evil, Lupin outmaneuvers them, and then he also does another villain monologue, which is weird. But then he also points out that Fujiko was planning to screw over everyone, so this was actually a triple cross on Lupin's part because he knew exactly what Fujiko was going to do. Meanwhile, Zenigata and Toshio are still on a couch in Tokyo figuring out what's going to happen as it's happening in real time. And they're figuring this out by reading magazines, so it's kind of ridiculous, but whatever, it's a movie. Now, once they figure out exactly what just happened in real time, they decide to go to it, so they get on a plane to Europe. And Zenigata updates his Facebook stats that now this is a terrorism case. Now, hilariously, Toshio has gotten himself sandwiched into a cliche Zenigata sidekick character. That's been a common thing in the past decade, and now that he's fitting into this archetype, he officially has no agency in the story. Now, meanwhile, hella evil Fujiko and semi-evil Lupin are having this gun standoff, and Fujiko gets the paintings, and this scene is so suspenseful because I can't tell if Fujiko is pure evil here or if Lupin is playing her to be evil and they're both putting on an act. So this is a really super complicated triple cross going on, and it seems like even Jigen and Goemon were involved in the triple cross, but if Jigen and Goemon were involved in it, so that confused me. But anyway, it's clever. By the way, the English dub of this movie is pretty freaking good, but it's not perfect. They have that weird retro fabulous dub quirk where they do a few lines way too accurately, but at the expense of them not fitting into the mouth-like movements. So they speed racer some of the lines of dialogue, and they're just like, oh, was that a kotatsu? Maybe that was a cat. Haha. Anyway, so the triple cross goes pretty badly, actually, and Lupin ends up getting hit on the head by a goddamn freight train. And he and the youngest Catseye sister end up escaping down by the river in a pure crossover moment. Now, again, Lupin gets hit on the head by a fucking freight train, so Lupin gets severely injured from this. I would guess he has a concussion. It also turns out he's blind in one eye. Possibly that's a metaphor for the cat's eye, I think. But anyway, so Ai is stuck with Lupin, and she ends up giving him some medicine. And then after the fact, she decides that maybe Lupin is a good guy, even though he did some shitty things when they first met. And so they spend a freaking hour just getting to know each other. And there's some nifty crossover backstory where it turns off that Catseye's dad and Lupin were best friends, and Catseye's dad set Lupin off on his vendetta against the Nazis because Catseye's dad just knew so many Nazis. And then Lupin and Ai end up getting captured by the terrorists who turn out to be these neo-Nazi bad guys. That's why they knew where all the Nazi stuff was. This honestly has happened in the last 3 Lupin movies I watched, but whatever, it's always refreshing. So then Zenigata just figures out where the Nazis are and where Lupin is because Lupin and the Nazis are in the same place, and he and Toshio jump through a window, and meanwhile the 2 Catseye sisters are completely useless at this point. They end up finding Jigen and Goemon, and then the old man who's with them also continues playing both sides and tells them they're a B team. Now, at this part of the film, I feel things kind of fall apart. The old man suddenly reveals himself as the Nazi mastermind, which he obviously was. And then the bad guys manage to steal all the keystones from Catseye and Lupin. And at the same time, Fujiko is just wandering around the French catacombs doing nothing. I guess she's looking for the treasure. Anyway, she reassures the audience that she's actually a good guy, even though she's been really, really shitty up to this point. Then the old man uses the keystone to do some weird satanic blood magic, and he like magically opens a box with his blood, or maybe the box had like a blood lock where it just needed blood to open. I don't really understand the blood box thing. Anyway, so then at the same time, Lupin uses a voice changer, which the old man was using, but Lupin stole it. And he uses it to trick the boss into thinking Catseye's father is still alive. And he tricks him so much that he completely exposes a corruption scandal inside his terrorist group. And that makes all his cronies like turn on him. Now, I will say I was honestly surprised that Lupin and I became best friends in this movie, because I always found I to be the cutest and most interesting Catseye girl because she's young and single. And they never really gave her the spotlight in the original show. But in this movie, she gets honestly too much screen time, and I find it kind of a weird and interesting, strange choice. What's up with that? Oh, wait. I get it. So what's up with this is they've slotted I into the underage Lupin princessy role, in the same way that they slotted Toshio into the Zenigata sidekick role. Like, they're just doing that thing where like Lupin hangs out with an underage girl and like they're very wholesome for some reason. Oh, I can't tell if that's smart or that's dumb. Like, do I like that or do I hate that? It's very cliche, but at the same time I'm like kind of into it because it's I, and I like I as a character. Anyway, so then Jigen and Goemon show up again, and Lupin corners the old Nazi and breaks his weird satanic keystone. I don't really get what the keystone was actually going to do, but anyway, so then his sidekick Dennis shows up and just shoots him in the head. Now, at this point, it seems like Dennis is going to just let Lupin leave, but Lupin like threatens Dennis, and like then it seems like they're going to fight, but then they just stand off when like Lupin makes Dennis agree to leave Catseye alone and like never get involved in this case again. So that was awkward and tense. Anyway, I still don't get what the hell the deal was with the keystone that ran on blood and why Lupin smashed it, and was there actually a greater treasure in the catacombs that they needed the keystone to get, or was the keystone itself the treasure? Either way, that's the end of the movie. Like, everything goes back to the status quo after that. The day is saved, the case is closed, Toshio and Zenigata get all the credit. Also, at the end, Lupin leaves a letter in French, and that's fun to see Lupin actually writing in French because he's implied to be like at least halfway French. Anyway, so the ending of this movie is pretty wholesome. It ends on like a feel-good moment. So overall, this movie had pretty good graphics, and I guess it was a solid above-average Lupin movie. Like, it definitely fell apart in the second act, but yeah, I'd give this movie a solid C. Hell, maybe even a solid B, just because, like, the opening was really strong and it was cool seeing Catseye again. I don't know, did I like this movie or was this movie weird? Like, I loved the way this movie started. This movie had some amazing action scenes at the front, and it probably had one of the most interesting depictions of Lupin and Fujiko I've seen in a long-ass time. While at the same time, they made Ai out to be like a total surprise hottie Lupin princess. That was very strange, but cool, but weird. I don't know. The Catseye characters definitely got like sidelines and were majorly playing second fiddle while being stuck in this cliched Lupin plot. And it's so weird now that it's over, like, because Hitomi barely did anything, and she's like the leader of Catseye. And hell, Rui might as well have not even been in the movie. She had one line and did squat. Toshio and Zenigata at least got an action scene or two, but I'm bemused that they did not participate at all in the finale. So this was an interesting movie. I would say it's a better than average Lupin movie. Though I'm very conflicted about the way they used the Catseye characters in this. At least the art style and the plot elevated the story, but on the flip side, as a Catseye fan, this was a pretty bad Catseye story, except for the fact it was all about I, and I literally never gets to be the focus of anything, so that was actually refreshing. I'm so conflicted about this movie. It was way less Catseye than I expected, way more Lupin than I expected, but it was also way more I than I was prepared for, so I-Chan for the win. Alright, Lupin vs. Catseye in the end, 7 out of 10. Pros. The opening scene, pure awesome chaos. I love crossovers, so that's just a positive for me. And I love those scenes with crazy evil Lupin and Fujiko. Cons though, Hitomi, Rui, Goemon, Jigen, barely in the movie. Barely did shit, barely participated. So Lupin vs. Catseye was cool and all, but I can retroactively use this movie as a template to create Lupin the Third versus The Simpsons. And I was originally kidding about this, but you know what? I haven't done a video in a while, so screw it. I'm going to commit to this gag and actually do it. So the film starts in World War II as Mr. Burns and Abe Simpson fight across Europe. Mr. Burns steals some Nazi treasure of some kind. And also, the Simpsons have also totally already established that this canonically happened. So this is some deep lore I'm spinning off here. Now in the present day, Lupin III gets wind of all this, so he comes to Springfield to find that treasure. So he knocks over the town. He immediately stages a huge heist at Mr. Burns' casino. He steals some money, but he doesn't find the treasure. The treasure just isn't there. So that was a huge waste of time, other than being a cool opening scene and setting up the premise that Lupin III has come to Springfield. Now at the same time, Lisa Simpson is mad at Mr. Burns for some random nuclear environmental thing. So she starts protesting his house to make him stop. Now also at the same time, Fujiko gets wind of this treasure plot and immediately gets a high-ranking job at the Springfield nuclear power plant, putting her into direct competition with Mr. Smithers, who canonically hates sexy women and sees her as an obvious threat for Mr. Burns' attention. Meanwhile, at the same time, Zenigata has saw that Lupin knocked over the casino and suddenly arrives in Springfield and ends up teaming up with Chief Wiggum, who is useless. They eat too many hamburgers and they accomplish nothing in this film, but also Zenigata still gets all the credit and all the wins in the end. So then Lupin decides it's finally time he's going to break into Mr. Burns' mansion all on his own. So he does the elaborate Lupin III gimmicky jewel thief super plot to bust in through Mr. Burns' ceiling in a perfectly carved hole. While at the same time, Lisa just walks through the front door and walks into the house. Now it all seems to be going super well for both Lupin III and Lisa Simpson until suddenly they're captured by Mr. Burns' enforcer, the robotic Gene Simmons. And then the next hour of the movie is just Lupin and Lisa stuck in Mr. Burns' dungeon, trying to get out of his house and figuring out whether or not they like each other as people or not. And meanwhile, all the other characters are stuck at the Simpsons' house doing literally nothing. At least the Simpson family meets Jigen and Goemon for some reason, because crossovers are stupid and that's just the way they work. So in the end, it turns out there was no treasure because the plotline was already resolved 20 years ago in the episode where it was initially brought up, and so the treasure's just gone and Lupin gets nothing. Anyway, that's essentially what this movie felt like to me as a long-term Catseye fan, and yeah, that's my take on the film. Alright guys, thanks for spending some time with me. I want to get back to YouTubing more often, so hopefully I'm not sick anymore, but maybe I'm just working on my anime too much lately, but I really want to finish my anime, and since it's winter, I want to save some time and save some money by doing stuff myself. Nonetheless, I'm still hanging in there, so I guess I'm doing something right, at least for now, so I'll see you guys next time when I feel like reviewing SD Kamen Rider. Alright, good night, bye.